So whenever you're being asked about the revenue factor, it is nothing but the price into quantity. So average is nothing but the sum total factor divided by the total number of units. The cost function of input prices and output quantity, whose value is the cost of making the output. Like when the input starts matching the output, it is constant. When the input is high and the output is on the lower side, it becomes a diminishing return to scale. Good morning and welcome to the third chapter in microeconomics, where we are going to talk about production and cost. In this revision class is very important because this chapter predominantly carries a very important weightage in terms of your final board examination. So let's just go further and try to understand what is there in production cost. So we will have a quick look into the chapter summary first, starting with the production function. Now the production function is a function of price and quantity. I'm going to bring in this factor very, very clearly. Why? Because production is nothing but transforming the inputs into a meaningful output. That's where the production function comes into picture. So it's very, very important. So whenever you're being asked about the revenue factor, it is nothing but the price into quantity. So similarly in production function, we are going to talk about the transformation of input to meaningful output. Next one, we're going to talk about short-run cost. Now, whenever we talk about this word called as short-run, which means to say that in any given situation today, everybody in this world would like to make money in a short time period. So similarly, companies or organizations would also like to make the production as quick as possible. So they want to see that the business has to run within a stipulated period of time and make the maximum output. That's where we bring in this word called as short run altogether. Now, there are some costs which are associated in the short run, which means to say that you will not be able to go back in terms of the cost factor. Now, this is very, very important. Why? Because there in the short run, we are not changing the variables. The variables are pretty much fixed in nature. There will not be any kind of variation. There will not be any kind of changes. And we will try to run the entire production within the given time limit. The next one is called as the long run. In opposite or in contrary to that of the short run, the long run is something where you would see that the variables of the production factors can be varied, can be altered altogether. Why? Because in a long run, you will have the time, you will have the amount of facility, amount of period in terms of changing whichever factors you want so that you will be able to continue the production for a longer time period. So when we talk about the long run, the variation factor is on the higher side. The long run, what we want to see here is that we tend to see how much can we make the margins. So there will be definitely a marginal cost, then average cost, and there would be fixed cost, all put together in the long run. Next, we are going to talk about total product. The sum total of all the factors. When I say total product, this is the final product that is going to land in the hands of the customer. So total product, according to me, is the end product that is available for the user there. So total product is the sum of all inputs put together and the final output that is being realized in the hands of the consumer. So that's what we call it as the total product. Now, the most interesting factor is the marginal product. As you start running a business, the most interesting thing is that you're never satisfied with the amount of production that you have done. You always want more. So that's where we are going to talk about marginal product. Why is this marginal product important for all of us? If you can produce something more, something extra than what you have done yesterday, that means, yes, you are trying to build your inventory, you are trying to build your system, at a higher levels altogether. So marginal product is that one additional factor that we are going to talk about here, that's going to be derived by putting one additional cost to it. So automatically, instead of producing 10 units, if I can produce 11 units today, that one additional product is the marginal product that we are talking about, followed by the average product. The word average itself is quite normal. It's quite sounding low to us. Why? Because the word average means, okay, it's not there, but it's there. Something which is a low-lying zone altogether. But nevertheless, in economics, we need to understand the way average product is being told is total product divided by any one factor, that might be the land, labor, or capital. So here I'm looking at TP divided by L, total product divided by labor factor. So how much is that being produced? Now, when I say that there are 10,000 units manufactured in 10 days, that means we are averagely producing about 1,000 units a day. That's where the average product comes in. So average is nothing but the sum total factor divided by the total number of units that we are going to talk about. Quite a simple one, which is very, very important for us in terms of learning. Followed by the law of diminishing marginal product. This is always that as you keep on increasing your production, are you going to stay on the same top-notch levels altogether? The answer is no. Why? Because when you start producing, you would initially start ramping up your production to that extent that you will be eating up on the margin, because you're going to add up continuously. And over a period of time, what is going to happen is that your marginal product will start declining. So the law of diminishing marginal product says that as you keep on producing more and more, there will be a decline onto the marginal product. Followed by law of variable proportion. The word itself is very, very clear. Variable proportion. So you will see an increasing, you will see a decreasing, you will see a negative factors altogether. Variable means it keeps on increasing, variation altogether that we are going to see. Laws of return to scale. So there's an increasing scale, there's a decreasing scale, there's a negative returns to the scale. Cost function, I have always told you, cost function is primarily about the price and quantity that is going to be produced today. So the moment I use this word cost function, it is quite important for us. Why? Because cost is not something which is just into the price factor that we are talking about, but cost has got a lot of variables inside which actually determine this activity. Followed by marginal cost. So one additional increase in the input factor will definitely lead you to the marginal cost factor. On the other side, when we are talking about the average cost, that means the sum total. Again, when I say the word average cost, so I would say that this average cost is derived by total cost divided by quantity. So this is very, very important for all of us. So the moment I say that it's a total cost divided by quantity, we are speaking about an average factor. On the whole, the total thing is being taken into, and then we are going to divide it by the quantity factors here. So coming to the exam corner, let us start with the 1-mark questions. These questions are very, very important for your final exam. In this revision, we are going to go through some of the important questions which are being consistently repeated in the board. So these questions will help you to score more in the final exams. Starting with the 1-mark questions, we have the first question coming up. What do you mean by total product? Just look into the question. They're just trying to ask you, what do you mean by total product? So total product as the total volume or amount of final output produced by whom? Produced by a firm using inputs for a given period. So as I have told you here, we are trying to talk about something called as total product. So total product is nothing but the finished product using the given inputs produced by a firm. Next one, marginal product. Now, marginal product, as we have told, the additional output produced as a result of employing an additional unit of the variable. Two times I'm going to use the word additional. One, I'm talking about the additional output. The other one, I'm talking about the additional unit of variable that is being added as a factor input here. So the both ways, one is on the output side, one is on the input side. So when you are going to give one additional factor input, you are going to get one additional factor output, and that's what we are going to call here as the marginal product. So this is a very, very important factor. So keep in mind those keywords: additional output, additional input. These keywords should be there in your mind, and please do write it in the exam to score more. Followed by the third question, write the cost function of a firm. The cost function of input prices and output quantity whose value is the cost of making the output. Let me make it very simple for you. Why? Because the cost function is a function of input prices and the output quantity. So I'm going to use these two keywords here, price and quantity, P and Q. So price and quantity are the two factors that is going to decide the cost function here. So cost function is a combination of price and quantity which has to be given here. Using that price and quantity, you are going to get a final output here. So cost function is purely decided by the price and quantity that is being employed. Using that only you will be able to get the output factor here. Now, cost function applies to every single industry. So every time when you are going to go through that word called as cost function, you need to be very clear about how it is being spoken about. Followed by total fixed cost. What is a total fixed cost? It is that cost which does not change with the change in the level of output. Moment I use this word total fixed cost, that means something is fixed. Something is just being attached. It is being kept there very, very clearly. Why am I trying to say this here? Let me make you understand very, very clearly. What they are trying to say here is that something which is already there, in spite of how much ever you produce, this particular cost is not going to change. This is not going to be again varied. This is going to remain there as a fixed cost. So that's why I say here, it is that cost which does not change. Underline that word, which does not change with the change in the level of output. Today I am producing 100, tomorrow I might produce 200, but that doesn't change the cost. So total fixed cost is one which does not change with the level of output. Followed by, now what is an average cost? We have spoken about it in the chapter summary, but coming back here, it is defined as the output per unit of factor inputs or the average of the total product per input. So I'm going to use this word output per input factor. So why am I bringing this? This is something like total product, or when I'm going to say about total cost divided by the quantity, this will give you your average cost factor. So when you divide the total cost by the quantity, you are going to get an average cost here. So that's what, as an output per unit of the factor of inputs that has been taken into position. Followed by, what is an average cost factor? That is what we have been seeing here, the equal to total number of costs divided by the quantity here. Now, when you talk about it, it's both ways. You need to understand how it is being repeated again and again in terms of the equal cost divided in terms of the total cost factors through the output Q. Followed by, now the 2-mark question, what is an isoquant? Isoquant is a curve that shows all the combinations of input that yield the same level of output. Iso means equal, quant means quantity. So combination of inputs that yield the same level of output. So there might be multiple combinations of input, but at the end of the day, you are going to see that the output does not change. So that's where we are going to bring in the factor called as isoquant. Iso means same or equal, and quant means the quantity factor. Followed by, give the meaning for the concept of short run and long run. So short run is generally defined as the time horizon on which the wages and prices are determined. As I've told you before itself, moment I use this word short run, that means it is for a shorter time period. So at that point of time, there might be wages, there might be price hikes, there might be factors which are affecting the production. But what we tend to do here is that these are inflexible in nature. This cannot be changed. This cannot be varied. So it sticks over a particular period of time. So that's why we call it as a factor in terms of understanding it here. So that's how things start working here very, very clearly. Followed by the long run is defined as the period of time over which the input prices have to be adjusted. Now, when a long run, as we are talking about, it is quite contradictory to that of a short run. Why? Because in the long run, the factors are going to change as per the need of the production. Now, if the company feels that I need to bring in more labor, I need to bring in more capital, I need to change the land dimensions, then automatically there are factors varying. So in a long run, the factors are more varying in nature because the nature of production tends to continue for a longer time duration. Followed by, mention the types of returns to scale. This is also a very, very important question. The three possible, one is called as the increasing returns, constant returns, and the diminishing returns. So as you start producing, initially what happens, the returns are increasing. The more you produce, you are going to get a larger return altogether. Over a period of time, this is the first increasing return, it becomes constant. Next, it becomes diminishing. So you would be able to see here, initially, the growth is very fast. You are able to get higher returns for your production. Slowly, you start saturating over a period of time. That's quite true because you have utilized all your resources. You are completely exhausted. So now what happens is that you have saturated in the market. Followed by which, once you're done with it, you will start flowing downwards south, which means to say that it's a diminishing return. So what happens here overall is that if the output increases by the same proportional change as the input change, then it is on the constant return to scale. So we would see that at one given point of time, over the input, if the output increases, that's increasing. When the input starts matching the output, it is constant. When the input is high and the output is on the lower side, it becomes a diminishing return to scale. Followed by the 4 markers. Explain Isoquant with the help of a diagram. Of course, we have spoken about it. So we are going to talk about the Isoquant, where we are going to see that the graph is going to be used to depict the equal amount of quantity that is being produced in spite of the multiple combinations in terms of the output factor. So you would see that the output does not change at all. You are getting a constant return to the scale. You are getting a constant factor in spite of change in the output. Now, as to a 4 marker, what I would say is that the graph is used here. So you need to draw the graph. Definitely, there will be 2 marks for the graph that will be given in the examination. So make it a point that when you are writing the theory, please study the graph also. That will help you to understand the situation better and you will be able to score more. Followed by the 4-mark question, that is total product, marginal product, and average product. We have studied about it. Total product is the relationship between the variable input and output when all the inputs are held constant. So that's the factor that we are talking about. The next level is what we are going to talk about, the marginal product, one additional output that is being produced by one additional input. That's the marginal product. The average product is the sum total average of the factors given below. So that's about the average product. Now, one might ask you this question, where exactly in the walk of life we are going to talk about this? When you are in a production company, it is mandatory for you to understand the growth cycles, how it is happening, when it is happening, and what kind of products, what kind of output that you are being able to produce over a given period of time. So definitely the concept of total product, marginal product, and average product are important here. Followed by, again, this is being given as an example. I've just extended the answer altogether so that you will be able to write with the formulas here. And this is what you would see it here in terms of the answer getting extended. So I've just put it total product, marginal product, and average product in 3 different slides here for you. followed by we're going to talk about the long run cost, which is very important. Why I'm going to tell you here is that the change in production levels over the time in response to the economic profit. So let me make it very simple. There are no fixed factors. That's the most important thing here in terms of production. There's no fixed factor at all. So the land, labor, capital, everything is going to vary according to the need of the production, according to the need of the entrepreneur, so that he's able to produce more. Now, we are also going to talk about brief returns to scale. We have spoken up in the 2 marks. What you have to do is talk about the increasing, the diminishing, and the constant returns to scale. These are very, very important for you. So please draw the diagram, explain how the increasing returns to scale, how the diminishing returns to scale, and how the constant returns to scale are a part of the situation that has been told to you, followed by the 6-mark question. Of course, again, the same total product, marginal product, average product can also be asked with the diagram in the 6 marks. So you are going to explain these 3 things with the diagram, and that would be a very, very important question in this chapter. Now, we are also going to talk about another important question here called as the law of variable proportion, when the marginal product is increasing, and then when we talk about the decreasing but remaining constant, and it continues to decrease and becomes negative factor. So you would have seen here in the diagram that we draw before, what happens is the marginal possibility of the product, we are going to talk about is initially it starts increasing, and it continues to grow with the momentum. Slowly, it starts becoming constant, which means to say that now the returns have become saturated. The returns are not going to get extended. They are not going to give you any higher yield altogether. And then you come to a situation when it starts decreasing and it becomes negative. So you will have to explain the theory part with the diagram for this question. With this, I come to the end of this session. I hope and believe that all the important questions discussed here would be of a great help to you in the examination as well as from the concept standpoint. In the next class, we would be discussing about chapter 4, where we are going to talk about the theory of perfect market. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.